Good morning and happy Earth Day. My name is Jessie Woodsmith. I'm the Director of Conservation and Stewardship at the Southern Conservation Trust, and I've been filming a larger video for you all about birding by ear, listening to bird calls and songs and trying to identify them from home, from my area right around my house. And that file is getting huge, so it's not quite ready yet. But I thought I would do a simple Earth Day overview by standing here at the edge of several habitat types. So this area is wooded, but I am on the edge of a soccer field and a community garden. And I've noticed that it's a great place to see birds because you get the birds that are calling from inside the trees, the ones that are flying over the open field, and the ones that are especially using the garden space. So I'm going to be silent for a few minutes, and my challenge to you, remember that I'm going to do more of a teaching video coming out, but I'm going to be silent, and I challenge you to get out a piece of paper or use your phone notes or computer notes and just listen with me as I let the recording go and see what species you can identify. You may have no skills as a birder by ear, but what I'll do is listen to, and I will tell you the ones that I have identified in the same period of time. So I'll be silent now. So I'm sure we'll hear more, but I heard several, some closer, some further away, so I'll focus on the closer ones that you may have heard too. The bird that is very loudly calling sounds sort of like whew, 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 whew. There we go, that's the one. That's a northern cardinal. So northern cardinal does a lot of variations on the same general calls. It's still continuing to call while I'm talking, in case you can hear that. But generally the cardinal sings within this range, and sometimes it goes up and bounces, and sometimes it goes down. So if you look up in a field guide, it may say the cardinal says purdy, 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 purdy. But it can also do the reverse of that and say pew, pew, pew. And basically it calls within this certain range or pitch and kind of a consistent volume too. And it just keeps going, bouncing in that range. So that one was sort of pew, 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 pew. So that was the northern cardinal. Another bird that I heard going quite a bit, and I hope that it will sound again. This is a much shorter sound. So I'll try to point to it when I hear, was a red-bellied woodpecker. So the red-bellied woodpecker, people describe the sound it makes as quirr, Q-U-E-R-R, although the spelling doesn't matter, it's just a approximation of the sound. It sort of trills at the end, but it's rather short, and it sounds a little bit like this, quirr, quirr, quirr. And it was going in that time of silence. If you want to pause, rewind, and listen again for that sound that I made, I will still try to point it out if I hear it. So it just did it again, and I'm not sure if it was too far away for you all to hear it. But they'll generally be singing from the tops of trees, or near the top of trees. So it's probably high in a tree a little ways off, probably right near my house. But we will keep listening. So there was a quirr, but then there's also, I'm pointing to another song, sort of a lilting back and forth whistled song. Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo. Anyway, that is an American robin, and people will describe that sound as cheerio, 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 cheerio. But you will know it if you hear it, and they generally keep on singing, keep on making that sound very drawn out and very loud. It's not always the case, but generally bigger birds are louder. They just, the way that the physics of sound works. And so cardinals and robins are sort of our good medium-sized birds compared to some of these others, and you'll generally hear them. Their sounds will generally carry much further. So I'm hearing just this kind of constant, and it may be so constant that it's not something you pick up on, but these little chips. Chip, chip. They've been going on this whole time, and that is hard to decide. A lot of birds, again, I said birds have songs and calls, so calls are much longer. It's generally the male calling or singing to announce its territory or to attract a mate, but calls can be shorter, irregular sounds that both males and females use as warnings, generally more communicating with another bird, so warning, or a human or a dog. So you may hear some calls, especially Carolina wren, if your dog is I said Carolina wren and one just started calling. I'll wait to talk about that one, but if your dog is maybe getting too close to a nest, if you're getting too close to a nest, they will scold you with calls. And the chips that I'm hearing, I believe are probably northern cardinal, and from being in this area quite a bit over the last few days, I know that there's a male cardinal who doesn't like it when I stand kind of near this sidewalk area. So I'm guessing that's what the chips are, but it's hard to say. I'm going to walk a little ways this way because you can hear the Carolina wren that's going. So wrens are very small birds, but their voices are very loud for their size. You may have heard them singing just outside or from inside your garage or porch. They are notorious nesters to get into garages and not want to get out. And I know that there is a wren who, yeah, I see him, who has been using these areas behind the compost bins, these hedges, because there's actually a nest in that rain barrel. I discovered that while filming other videos, so you'll see my discovery at some point in the future. So if I stand here, probably he will start scolding me, but the wren that I've heard has been doing its song, which is said to be tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle. So 3 syllables, although they can be very close together, much faster than I was just able to do it. Tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle. A little bit more like that, although it's hard to approximate a bird. But they will also do the scolding noise that is a much fussier sound. And I'm standing here kind of near the rain barrel where the nest is. I won't stay here for long, but we'll see if we can hear it a little more clearly if I stop talking. So don't see him yet, but far off in the distance, I hope you can hear it, there's a meh, meh, meh. And that's not a truck, that's a blue jay. So blue jays, again, they're even bigger than robins. They're a fairly large bird for kind of the common backyard birds that we see. And they are just as loud to match it. And so as they fly, they generally make this noise, meh, 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 or that sharp noise that you just heard. So that's a blue jay, and you don't have to take my bias on them, but I think that they're sort of loud, obnoxious birds. So I don't love that sound. It's sort of a grating meh. Okay, so now there are a couple, and this is a good way to listen out for birds. One, you'll often hear one go and then another respond, and that's a really good way to practice picking up on them because you get kind of double the sounds, and you can also work on identifying where something is calling from. And it may be easier to start focusing in on sounds if you can narrow in on the direction it's coming from, and then once you've identified it, sort of ignore it from your mind. Just ignore it and listen to other areas. It's a way that I have, when I've done surveys in the past, have kept track of if there were a lot of birds calling at once. You sort of go one by one and you estimate where they're coming from. Okay, so I hear the wren now. So there's one calling from over here from, I think, the fence line of the community garden. There's one answering in the woods. It's not the loudest sound you're hearing right now, but there you go. That was a good 3-syllable. Tea kettle, tea. Sometimes the emphasis will be on others. So tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle was kind of what that one sounded like. And I hear some more blue jays. And I hear choop, 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 choop. And that's the cardinal again. So I think that there may have been some other birds in that period of silence at the beginning before I started identifying them. So I challenge you to try to find the ones we've now identified and I've sort of described for you, imitated for you. Go back and try and identify those in the songs because a lot of them were calling during that period of recording. But what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll either put in a description or put in a comment a little later on in the video identifying some more that I heard in that time, and you can look those ones up yourself. I'd recommend a few resources before I go. Don't feel bad if you couldn't really identify the sounds that you were hearing as I described them. It's a really subjective thing. It's sort of like music where people hear sounds slightly different, and how I might describe it may not be the best way for you to visualize or think about the sound. So what I would recommend you do is go to a couple different websites. So the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and I'll post these in the links. The Cornell Lab of Ornithology has a really great website with multiple sound files, and so you can actually find bird calls that were recorded in regions similar to yours, because birds have different dialects sometimes, and it may be easier to compare what you're hearing to something from a similar region, from the East Coast maybe, if you're watching from the East Coast. The Audubon, of course, has amazing resources. It has a really great online field guide. So for all of those, you do have to search by the species. When you're online, you have to search for the species name, and then you can play clips. But I would just encourage you to look up the ones that you routinely see in your yard or your neighborhood on walks, and you can start to build up strength in identifying those really common ones by sound. So then when you're out listening for more birds, you can go through process of elimination, and if it's something completely new, you can work to identify that. There are also some really great apps. I really like the Audubon Bird app. There's several others that are out there, and a lot of those have the sound clips too, and some even allow you to search the sound clips by describing the song. Was it a trill? Was it one sharp note? Was it a multiple syllable phrase that went up and down? Things like that. And those resources are really handy. However, the best possible thing is to go out to an area with someone who knows their bird calls, because you can stand next to each other, you can point things out in the same direction. You can say, I just heard a really high trilling noise coming from the tops of the trees, and a good birder will also use clues like where the bird is in the tops of trees or on the ground or in hedges. We'll use that to help identify birds by sound. So I hope you have enjoyed this little overview or sneak peek video. Like I said, I'm working on a larger video that is just taking some time of other birds I've identified in this area, walking around and giving short video descriptions. So look for that in the coming days, but for now I wanted there to be something for Earth Day, so happy Earth Day. I am looking right now at an eastern bluebird, and an eastern phoebe on the fence line. I believe they'll be too far for you to see. They're out on the fence line. But there is our Carolina wren to close us out. Tea-kettle, tea-kettle, tea-kettle. And that noise, actually, before I go, that noise, that trill, is the Carolina wren doing its call. So I may have been too close to the area that nest is in, and they're still telling me to get out, or communicating with another bird. But that, like the tea kettle, that is also the other sound that Carolina wren makes. And I hear another whir coming from back that way. So I encourage you to get outside and listen in your backyard today and keep working on those skills.